Hi, team. Today, our session is all about arts in the early childhood classroom. We want to make sure that we are making our early childhood classrooms as creative as possible. We want to introduce our students to art concepts. We want them to study artists, and we want there to be at least a center set up with some different art projects. So every day in my early childhood classroom, as you can see, we did art projects. I broke my time up into centers and to working on art projects and to coming and working in small groups. And we often left our classroom with a headband because I wanted my students to be able to express themselves. So every single day I had a different art activity set up. I'm going to show you a few of them. But first are the materials. So I had lots of materials. I had clay, I had finger paints, I had watercolors, I had different sizes of paintbrushes, I had Play-Doh, I had skinny markers, I had fat markers, all types of scissors, pencils, colored pencils, pens, permanent markers, markers that wiped off, tattoos. There were all sorts of things that I could put in my center so that my children were able to use all sorts of materials. We have to remember that they don't have these materials at home, right? So a few things that I wanted to show you is that they started out and everyone had an art journal. It could be a journal that they brought from home, or it can be a journal that you give them. This is something that they can put their art projects in, and they can go to the art center and they can doodle, they can play, they can glue. Then other things, like if today was soft day, let's say we were talking about things that were hard and soft, they could glue everything soft on their paper. Let's say we were doing the letter F and we were doing fantastic foil. Maybe this was an art project that they would do in the center. Maybe we are doing spaghetti or all things hard. And here is a spaghetti creation. They can do it any way they want. Let them be creative. Because the arts help cognitive development, language development, cultural awareness, emotional development, social development. We want them engaged. This is a fun one that we did for art. This was called Peel and Stick. So they would have a lot of different stickers that they could choose from, and then they had a folder and they could peel them and stick them all over. And this helps with their fine motor skills also. I had all sorts of paper. I also liked doing cutting activities. This is a cutting stories book that I used in my classroom. And this is just one. And it was a story that I read. And the students would eventually cut out a bat. And we would put the bat on straws. We would learn about bats. We would learn how they're nocturnal. If we could go on a field trip, we could go to a cave. Or we could do a virtual field trip to a cave. Again, you know, I love children's literature. We could use children's literature and do a leaf rubbing. But I want you to know that art is much more than just us creating things on paper. It is dance, it is music and movement. And this is something that I did every day in my classroom throughout the day, not just once, but throughout the day. Another thing is letting them dress up, letting them build plays, letting them make up their own ideas throughout the day. So make sure that you have dress up clays in your classroom. Let them draw just for fun. A few other things that I wanted to show you is that I had little boxes like this in my classroom. This is where they could pull out all types of finger puppets, and they could create, and they could talk to each other. They could make up a play. So that was one puppet that I had. And then they could make up different things about the puppets living in here. And there were different finger puppets all throughout my classroom. And this was a way for them to imagine and engage and use their cognitive development, their language skills. This is all a part of the arts. So another thing, I always left little rubber bands. We could teach them how to make bracelets. They could wear their bracelets home. I wanted them to be able to create things that they could take home and show their families. You know, I've talked about puppets before. They can use big puppets. They can use the small puppets. Whatever they want to do to create, to be engaged, to use their language. to make sure that they are really being creative and using their imagination. That is what we want for our students in the early childhood classroom. When you're doing this, you're going to make sure that you find your early learning standard. You're going to write your objectives that go with your centers and your art lessons and make those covered so that you can document that you're teaching art. Have fun with it. This should be a really, really interesting and fun part of your classroom.